Hi folks, welcome back to Growing Our Retirement. So today we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into these totes that we use for plant propagation. We use them for both softwood and hardwood cuttings. What we have here is all of the softwood cuttings that we took for our low investment startup nursery. You can see it's the middle of winter. It's actually raining a little bit. It's very windy, but it's not that cold. But these plants have already been through very cold weather, down to 10 degrees at least. We've had snow, and they've been in here very happily. And I'm going to show you what we do with them over the winter, which is really nothing. There's some holes that we put in the sides to keep bacteria from growing on the surface of the potting mix. That leads to root rot problems, so we have those holes. But that then also necessitates us adding some water to them from time to time because they will dry out a little bit. So let's start to open some of these up. And I'm also going to share with you a little bit later a tip that one of our viewers sent us about how we make those holes in the sides of the totes, and a little bit easier way to do that. So let's start taking a look at these and let's give them some water. So one of the things that we've talked about when we propagate is that we use these totes, and we just buy them. They're pretty inexpensive. I think they're about $8 or $9 each. This one happens to be 24 by 16 by 13 7/8. It's made by Sterilite, 66 quarts or 62 liters. And what we do is we drill holes all the way around, about 8 total in the sides, and this we do that right at the level where the dirt or the potting mix that we use, which is perlite and sphagnum peat moss, a little bit of a mix, about 2/3 perlite, 1/3 sphagnum peat moss, and we use this for softwood and hardwood cuttings. And we find that the little air holes keep us from getting that green bacteria or algae that kind of grows when there's absolutely no air circulation. After we put the top on this, it's not 100% airtight because you're going to have the holes, but it's going to keep the rain out so that it's not going to become excessively watered, and then that way you don't have to drill holes in the bottom, and you don't want to overwater it so that it's not sitting in a soppy mess down here, of course. So it's kind of the perfect combination. The one trade-off with the holes, though, is you get some air circulation, but you're going to have to water these totes from time to time. You know, in the winter, maybe once a month, maybe not even. If you're doing softwood cuttings in the warmer weather and you're getting a lot more, dry air through, maybe you're watering every 2 weeks. So one thing I did want to show is that one of our awesome viewers suggested in comments to use a soldering iron instead of the drilling. And I did find with the drilling that if I slipped up and didn't have a backer there, that I'd crack some of these. And what I'm really trying to avoid is a hole that's large enough for a rodent to get into. These little tiny voles and mice are so small they can get in a hole the size of a dime. So I want to be, smaller than that, but still have enough air circulation. So following our viewers' very good advice, I am now using the soldering iron. I just used this block of wood for a spacer or a marker so I know what size, or height rather, to make my hole. And this particular soldering iron just happens to be the exact right size to push it right on through and make a perfect hole. So no more splitting. It's actually a lot faster. And I can go around this tub in a couple of minutes, make all my holes. I do 3 on each side and 2 on each end. So that's 6, 8. 10 holes total. And we really have to thank our viewers for adding their expertise, because that's how we all learn. And that's how we learned a lot of things from other channels and from a lot of trial and error and making mistakes. But this works fantastic. When I get all done, I take my heat gun. I heat these labels up and then they peel right off. This one's got a little RFID label on it. And we're done. It's taking me a quarter of the time that it used to, and it's doing a better job. So just want to pass that tip along and thank our viewer for that great comment. So we're going to open a few of these up. And I can feel that this tote's gotten kind of dried out a little bit. It's still moist, but it needs a little bit of water to bring that moisture level up a little bit. So I put about a quart of water in there, and I'm just going to go ahead and return the top back on here. These don't look fantastic because they're completely dormant dogwood plants. However, they're doing just fine. If we pull one up, you might not be able to see it, but we can see that it's rooted already. They're doing great. And come spring, these will kind of pop back to life. There'll be new growth that'll come on them. The roots will really expand out and root a little bit deeper, and then they'll be ready to be transplanted into pots so that we can grow them out. Okay, so the next one we'll open up. These are azaleas. And you can see, because they're more of an evergreen plant, they are still a little bit green. They've dropped some leaves. Again, we know they're very well rooted. You can see they have these very fine roots. And that is a healthy little azalea. I'm going to tuck that back in. And this one, I can feel by the weight of it, it's not dried out as much as that last one was. And I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little bit of water. I don't have holes in the bottom of these, so I don't want to overwater them. And the only reason I'm giving them any water is because of the holes in the side, which do allow a little bit of airflow and will dry the soil out a little bit over time. All right, here we have another whole tote full of azaleas, and these look fantastic also. I'm not going to pull out, but I can tell from the resistance that the roots on these are fantastic. In fact, they're probably already starting to all knit together. So when we separate these, it'd be a little bit trickier. We'll have to gently separate them from each other, but they're going to be well rooted. I don't remember how many are in here, but there's at least 60 or 75. This one, again, has been holding water pretty well. It's not dried out, but I will give it a little shot of water. And that's all it takes, like once a month in the winter, as you go through, you know, from November, December, January, February, March. Check them once a month and give them a little bit of water if they need it. Don't overdo it. There's no holes in the bottom. So, you know, the perlite and sphagnum peat moss mix works very well to drain, but you still don't want to saturate these. That's not going to be good, and the roots are going to rot. So just keep them moist. That's it. Don't worry so much about them. They're 100% dormant right now. They're not growing at all, but they'll begin growing in the spring, and they'll also begin to put on more and more roots. So that's why we leave them in here so long before we pot them up into plants. But you know, this is going to make a tremendous amount of great plants, and I think we're close to 100% rooting here. I don't see any that didn't make it. And And folks, I'll tell you, when we first started doing this, that was not the case. We were lucky to get 5%, 10%. Our system of the totes, using the right medium, having a lot of room for the plant to breathe up on the top was great. These little tiny kind of home style propagation bins, they just don't work that well. The plants get too wet, too dry. The tops get knocked off in the winter. They're not robust enough. You can't put that many in the small things. So the totes are great. I mean, you can get 60 to 100 of something in one tote. That's the kind of numbers that you want to be working with. And you know, you buy the totes once, you're not going to have to buy them again probably for many, many, many years. They're going to go at least 10 years for you. All right, so this is an example of one of our totes that does not have holes in the side. And you know, that's not 100% necessary, but we do find it works better. But I'm showing you this to show you, if you can see, this little bit of green that starts to develop at the top of the soil. And you know, that's okay, unless it becomes significant, but we really don't want that, and that can lead to root rot and problems. These are Andromedas, and for the most part they're pretty well rooted. It's kind of hard to see that. But they haven't developed a real big, thick root ball yet. So it's good for them to sit through the winter like this and keep developing their roots. In the spring, they'll perk up and they'll take off. You see they're still nice and green, they're not drying out. If you see one that has, you can toss it aside. We don't really want dead plants in our totes. And this one needs a little bit of water. It doesn't have the holes in the side, but it does feel a little bit dry. I'm just going to give it a little bit of water. And we're going to park that until spring. We'll check it again in another month, make sure it doesn't need a little more water. And there you have it. So we won't go through every tote, but we've got roughly 12 totes. Each one has 50, 60 plants in it, so that's what, 600 plants in total. We would expect 80-90% will root. We're going to start now doing hardwood cuttings in another couple of weeks throughout January and February, and by the time the summer comes, hopefully we'll have about 1,000 plants in propagation rooting to create more small plants for your low investment backyard nursery. The idea here is not to spend money on plants, but to propagate your own. You know, your imagination is the only limit, and then the resources you can find to go get cuttings from your yard, plants that you have, friends, church, any place that you know of that would allow you to take some cuttings. So that's it. We'll wrap it up. But we wanted to give you a little bit of an update about how the totes do right in the middle of the winter, and you can see they're doing just fine. A couple are doing a little better than others, but for the most part, they're doing great. And again, these are all softwood cuttings that were taken late spring, early summer, for the most part, and are now doing their first winter, and then their next step is into pots, grow them out, and sell them. Thanks for watching. We really do appreciate all of you. We really love your comments and tips, and we do listen to them all and appreciate the feedback and your support. Thank you.